Today's guest is a visionary of music, culture, and education. Dr. Jason King is the Dean of the USC Thornton School of Music, where he's reimagining what a modern music school can be. Previous to USC, Jason helped build the NYU Clive Davis Institute from the ground up, bringing artists like Pharrell and Alicia Keys into the classroom and shaping a new generation of creative leaders. Jason's produced landmark tributes for icons like Sylvester and Quincy Jones, written for the New York Times, Pitchfork, and Vibe, and appeared in acclaimed music documentaries for HBO, Netflix, and Showtime. A scholar, storyteller, and tastemaker, this is Mixed and Mastered with Dr. Jason King. Welcome to Mixed and Mastered, the podcast where the stories of the music industry come to life. I'm Jeffrey Sledge, bringing you real conversations with the people who have shaped the sound of music. We're pulling back the curtain on what it takes to make it in the music business. These are the stories you won't hear anywhere else, told by the people who live them. This is Mixed and Mastered. Mixed and Mastered podcast with a scholar, professor, a really smart dude who I really admire, Dr. Jason King. How you been, man?
I'm good. It's good to see you. It's we've known each other a long time.
Yeah. We have. I appreciate you coming on the show. This is going to be a good one because you're the first academic music person that I've spoken to so far.
Oh, good.
First one.
Happy to be the first. Hopefully,
yeah. So let's get it cracking from the start. So you grew up in Canada.
I did. I grew up in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada.
Okay, so tell me about that.
My parents are from Trinidad.
Wait. Before you go further, I had a question in my head.
Sure.
Roadies or doubles? What's your favorite?
Definitely roti, for sure. I mean,
doubles, really? Okay.
Oh, yeah. No, we're like Trini to the bone. So my family comes from Trinidad, so we love roti. That was just such a big part of my growing up, and I'm always looking for the perfect roti in LA, by the way. So it's another conversation for another time.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I grew up in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. My parents came from Trinidad, and they migrated to Canada as geographers. They came to study here. I was born and raised in Canada, spent my first 16 years or so in Canada, and then came to the United States. I always wanted to be in the US. I felt like it was the place that I needed to be to kind of pursue my creativity and my scholarship the way that I wanted to. But I am very much Canadian, and I think I look at the world and move through the world through a Canadian lens in a lot of ways, and very proud to be Canadian.
Cool. So tell me about your first, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess that walks into musicality. What brought that on? Was a lot of music in the house? Was it, obviously come from Trinidad, the carnival's really big and it's very musical. What sparked that interest?
Yeah, I was always into music. My first memory is sitting on my father's knee and him playing calypso rhythms. And nice. I can remember that like it was yesterday. I must have been, 3 or 4 years old, maybe. Wow. My parents' record collection was huge for me. It was, this opportunity to be very curious about music, from Jimi Hendrix to Babatunde Olatunji to Melanie to, Strauss and classical music. I played those records nonstop. I mean, Roberta Flack is an artist that I've interviewed and written about extensively. And, they had her first Take album on Atlantic Records. And I remember listening to that intently. So I think a lot of things started with my genuine interest in popular music and listening to radio. 630 Ched was the big station where they would play all the top 40 stuff, Casey Kasem, all of that. But I was really interested in those albums, vinyl albums, reading the liner notes, looking at the back of the albums, finding out who was doing what, getting very interested on that level. Yeah. And also we had the Edmonton Public Library where you could go and take 10 records out at a time. So I would go with my bicycle, I would go to the library, I would take 10 records out, I would drop the needle, listen to everything, and then I would get on my bike, go back and listen to get the next 10, listen to more. So I listened to every genre. I became really, I developed a comprehensive knowledge of music, I think, from those early years.
Yeah, yeah. I worked with two Trini artists over the years. Well, they were Trini ancestry, which was Fife Dog.
Oh yeah,
and Chip Fu from the Fushnikins.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I remember when me and Chip went to Jamaica to work with Steely and Clevie, and we were staying in this hotel, and we were in the pool or something. We were just kind of hanging out, waiting to go later on the evening. And he saw this lady, and he like his mouth dropped open. He was like, "Oh my God!" And I didn't know who she was. I was like, she was an older lady. You know, but I was like, he was stunned. It was like if we saw like Prince or somebody, right? And it was Calypso Rose.
Wow.
And he was just stunned. He's like, "It's Calypso Rose." He went over and met her and took pictures and stuff. So I remember I saw how deep that music affected him.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yep.
But anyway, enough about me. Back to you. So I see you started you are trained as a classical pianist.
Mm-hmm.
Is it pianist or pianist? I don't know if I say it right.
Pianist.
Pianist.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I took piano lessons when I was a kid. My parents put me and my brother in piano lessons in Edmonton. And, we did all of the things that you would do at that age. I just was not feeling it because I really wanted to be doing film music. I was in love with the music of John Williams. I loved everything he'd done for Raiders of the Lost Ark and E.T. and Star Wars and those kinds of films. And so that's what I wanted to play. So that's what we started learning. But I'm really grateful for that early foundation in classical music because it informed a lot of how I think about music and it informed my love for classical music. But I got interested in everything. And I always was anyway because of my parents' record collection. But, classical music was to me as important as jazz or R&B or any of the other musics that I listened to that I got into a little bit later. So, yeah, but that was my early start as an instrumentalist.
You still play a lot now?
I do not. I wish I did. I just don't have the time. But I'm a producer and I've written songs and that's a huge aspect of my life and it's something it drives me very much. And so, I'm going to get back to it soon enough.
Okay. So you came to New York when you were like 16, you say, and you came to go to school. I came to study at the American Musical and Dramatic Academy, which was on the Upper West Side of New York. Probably famous for figures like Janelle Monáe and Jason Derulo and others who've been there since. But I came to study there and studied theater and music and musical theater and loved my time there. And then I went to the New School for Social Research for undergraduate in New York. And there, the idea of the degree was that I had already done a lot of my artistic training in music and theater. And so I was going to go and take writing and cultural studies classes at the New School. And so that's what I did. And I got very interested in not only being involved in the world of making art and being involved in creativity, but also writing about it from a scholarly lens and a scholarly angle, which I kind of hadn't put two together that you could actually do that and make a living out of it. But I was also inspired at that time by reading the incredible journalism of people like Greg Tate, the late Greg Tate, and Nelson Jordan, Danielle Smith, and Dream Hampton, and all these amazing writers. And Village Voice for me was like such a kind of centerpiece at that time. Vibe magazine also was huge, and I was loving reading, Scott Poulsen Bryant and all these writers in there, and I wanted to do that as well. So it was a really exciting time in the 90s to be sort of mirroring my interests in creativity and being in the world of making music and theater and all of those kinds of things with writing about it, being a scholar and a journalist. So what was the I know, but for the people, what was the music / cultural / club scene around the time you hit the streets in New York? What was going on back then?
Oh my God, the 90s in New York City. I mean, it was like the cultural hub of everything, right?
Exactly.
So there was
whatever.
So much stuff going on, and also, of course, all the dance music and the tunnel and all of that stuff. So I think it was an incredibly incredibly exciting scene. Hip hop for me was like everything. And I just part of the reason I wanted to be in New York so badly, because it felt like that was the kind of focal point of so much creativity, particularly, early 90s, mid 90s. And so many of the artists that I loved and the people that I listened to, that's where they were. And so that's where I wanted to be. And so I was living in Harlem, I think in 95, 96.
Where'd you live? What street?
I was on 121st Street in Riverside.
I was in 95, I was on 150th in Riverside.
Oh, you were over there? Wow, that's crazy.
Right up the street from you, yeah. Right up the street.
I mean, it was just incredible. And I mean, I lived in a bunch of different places in Harlem and in all over New York at that time. But it's hard to describe, I think, the incredible energy that existed in the city at that moment. I think I was in some ways very influenced by it, and it affected the way that I write and think about the world.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, back. I hate to sound, back in my day, but back then, like you said, everything was going on, whatever kind of genre or scene you wanted to get into or explore, so you could do it. I remember, I'll never forget one night, Timmy Regisford used to spin on KISS on Saturday nights. Probably, I'm telling you like you don't know, and he spun at the Live from the Shelter.
Oh yeah,
spun like 12 to 2. I was at the crib by myself. And he was killing it, right? I had never been to the Shelter. And I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I just shower, put my shit on, roll down to the Shelter like 3 a.m, which for them was like 9 p.m. rather. It was early, right? At 3 a.m. And unfortunately, the doorman was a cat I knew named Freddie. I didn't know he worked there. And he let me in. And that shit was like, I walked out, it was daytime. You know what I'm saying?
It's absolutely incredible. Absolutely amazing. Yeah. And I was really like in the music community as well then. And so I remember being at Club Rebel. One of my good friends was maybe one of the greatest gospel tenors who ever lived, Carl Hall. And he had sung background for Martha Wash and Jocelyn Brown on the Todd Terry version of Keep on Jumpin'. And so I remember going to that one night. And that was such an interesting mix, right? Of like Todd Terry and his kind of house music and like the hip hop influence, but then Martha Wash, this legendary singer who'd been around since the 70s with Sylvester and others, and Jocelyn Brown, such an incredible singer, doing this cover. And that's the kind of thing that just could like only happen in New York. And then I started working with Martha, and I knew Carl, and I worked with Carl really closely. And, I always think back to those days because there's nothing like it. It was an incredible mixture of different cultural traditions coming together.
Yeah, it was. So tell me about your. I saw you. You mentioned it already. You're a writer. You're a big journalist. You work for Vibe and several other magazines. So tell me about that.
I mean, I always wanted to be a writer. I studied journalism for a year in Canada, in university before I came to New York, journalism and mass communications. I knew I was a good writer, but I didn't know that you could really pursue a career in music journalism. I really didn't know anything about that until I got turned on to Vibe and The Village Voice. And then it was my mission to write for either of those magazines. And I tried for a couple of years while I was a student. I was doing my master's and my PhD at NYU. And I also wanted to be writing journalism at that time. And so I would send these, my clips to The Village Voice. Eric Weisbard was the editor then. Never heard back from him. Eric and I are friends. I never heard back ever. And Vibe magazine was like the height. It was like, if I could write for Vibe, that would be absolutely incredible. And so I got an opportunity to write for Vibe through Emil Wilbekin when he was editor. We were on a panel together, and he just turned to me and said, "You're smart. You should be writing for Vibe." And my editor was Elizabeth Mendez-Berry. Associate editor was John Caramanica. And the first piece I did was on Usher 8701 for Vibe to review that album, which was the feature review. And then Village Voice, I got an opportunity to write through Richard Goldstein, who was the executive editor. And then Robert Christgau, one of the great writers, reached out to me and said, you should be writing for The Village Voice. And so then I started doing R&B and hip hop reviews for The Voice. So the two magazines that I came to, that I really wanted to write for, I ended up writing for such a long time, and got to meet all my heroes and work with all my heroes and be involved in the Pop Conference, which is the annual pop music studies and music journalism conference that happens every year. It used to happen in Seattle. And then I became a producer of it through the pandemic and brought it to New York and then ultimately to LA, where we are now. And so that's been incredible in terms of meeting and connecting with community. But the journalism community, music journalism community is, a source of so much of what I'm interested in. And I think it's been really incredible to see how much amazing commentary and scholarship has come out of that world and that whole community. It's really incredible.
Yeah, it's like you guys are just writing, right? Back then, you just you love writing what you loved, But then, like, fast forward, and the titans that have come out of that thing, and it's crazy. Like the writers, and like you said, the Dream and Emil and yourself, and Scott and Brian, and this, and on and on and on. But it's amazing what it turned into.
Yeah. The critical voice is incredibly important. Everything can't just be a press release, right? You need to have, a certain kind of distance. And I think, supporting sort of critical voices in the arts and specifically in music, because it helps musicians become better. It also helps audiences have a greater understanding and appreciation for music. And that's the more that we can support the critical community, especially in this moment when we're playing with history and playing with
erasing things. And
exactly, that's the idea of what critics can do to help contextualize work and really deep dives into research and reporting. All of that stuff is still incredibly important.
Absolutely. So, like, tell me my timeline off, because I'm skipping around a bit, but I also want to get into you traveling, because I saw you lived in Abu Dhabi, and you lived in Singapore and Berlin. That's fascinating to me. So tell me how that came about, and tell me your thoughts on that.
Sure. So, in addition to writing and journalism, so I think even when I met you, I was the founding faculty member at the Clive Davis Department of Recorded Music at New York University. And then that became the Clive Davis Institute of Recorded Music. And I was in leadership positions there for 22 years, from associate chair and artistic director and chair of the program. And so I worked closely with Clive Davis, one of the greatest record executives in the history of music.
Absolutely.
And, incredible staff and faculty.
Let's go back a little bit, because I don't want to gloss over that. How did that come about? Because you developed that school, like, you from zero, with Clive, obviously, but like it didn't exist before you. So tell me about all of that, and we'll get to the traveling afterwards.
Sure. So that I was a student at NYU. I did my master's and I did my PhD there, and with a focus on popular music through the Department of Performance Studies. And I was getting ready to graduate. I hadn't defended my dissertation yet, but I was about to, and got this amazing opportunity to be the founding full-time faculty member of the Clive Davis Department. I had not met Clive Davis at that time. I had gone a couple of years earlier to an event that he had done at NYU, in which he was being interviewed about his career, and he played demos from the My Love Is Your Love album, Whitney Houston.
Nah, word?
Yeah,
that's crazy.
It was really crazy. And I remember he played like a Casio demo of that Babyface song on My Love Is Your Love. I can't remember the name of it.
Wow.
It was quite amazing. And so that always stuck with me. And then I had this opportunity to meet him, and we bonded very quickly over our shared love of music. And also, he's a really, he's lived the history of music. And so
absolutely
very much engaged with every aspect of the artist that he was working with. And I could talk to him very specifically about, the artist that he, had signed, and Sly and the Family Stone or whoever else it was, about specific tracks, about moments on tracks. And so I think he respected my, musical knowledge, and I deeply respected his history and tradition in the industry. And so getting to work with the dean of the Tisch School of the Arts and so many other amazing leaders there, and collaborate with the faculty who eventually came on board to really build that school and to really shape the curriculum and bring in the first group of students and create the admissions process. And the idea of it, which was very new for its time, and I think they're still very much on the cutting edge, was the idea of training students as creative entrepreneurs in recorded music. The idea that a student could study the art of making music, but then also the business of it as well, and entrepreneurship. And in my current position as dean of the USC Thornton School of Music, now that I'm out in LA, we're also doing something quite similar, which is giving students a holistic education in music. So the idea is that you come and study music, and you're also becoming a well-rounded figure who has access to training in business and the industry of music and research and so on. And you're taking classes outside of music as well. And that just makes you a more well-rounded person to pursue a sustained career in popular music for a longer period of time. It used to be, as you know, that you would not go to a university to study pop music.
No, not at all. You just kind of, there was no one way. There was kind of no one way to get in. Everybody's story was completely different on how they stumbled into their career. So the first set of students that you brought in. Well, before there was one question before that. So the idea of developing this school, was it Clive and him enlisting you, or was it you going to him and say, "Yo, we should do this," or was it kind of
no. I didn't know him at all at the time. So this was he was a member of the dean's board at the Tisch School of the Art, and this is one of the greatest deans Tisch has ever had, Mary Schmidt-Campbell, and she worked with him. And he funded this program. So he wrote a check to start this program. So it was really his idea to create a music school at NYU that would be, world class and the equivalent of the film or, TV program or the dramatic arts program there, and the School of Drama. And so it was all his idea. And they had some early instructors who were doing part-time teaching there to kind of suss out the interest of students in this area. Nelson George did some teaching. Lauren Davis did some teaching as well, and some others. And I came in I was hired as the first full-time faculty member there. And so at that time, it wasn't a program itself. It wasn't even accredited by the state. So I had to write most of the curriculum. I created the admissions process, and worked with some of the architects to help build the studio. It was really startup and ground up. And then Jim Anderson came in as our first chair. Other faculty members were hired, and we worked all very collaboratively to help build and shape this brand new, unprecedented program in which students were getting a Bachelor of Fine Arts in recorded music and studying how to become creative entrepreneurs. And that program is unbelievable, amazing, and so many great people have come out of it over the years. Amazing.
Give me a couple names.
Oh gosh, where do you? People know some of the famous names: Maggie Rogers, Arca. It's a long list of really great, cutting edge artists. Day Trip as producers who went on to do so much of the Lil Nas X records and everything else. I'd be here all day if trying to go through all the names, but it's an incredible laundry list of great people, producers, performers, executives in the industry who've come through that program.
So tell me about real quick about like that first. What was there a most popular class on your first curriculum? Like, was there one class like, oh, everybody's going in this, or you try to herd people over here? It was like, no, everyone wants to be in this one.
When students who would come into that program in the first 2 years, they had core classes that they had to take actually throughout the 4 years, but particularly in the first 2 years, it's much more regimented, and you have a series of required classes that you have to take, and then you have your electives that you can take whatever classes you want. But those classes run the gamut from business classes, classes on writing, history, emergent media studies, classes on ear training, performance classes, all of those kinds of things. So I wouldn't say which one was more popular than the next, but of course, I think students want to be in the recording studio. They want to learn how to record. They want to write original songs and original music, and so that in many ways is kind of the core of what that was all about. But business was super interesting for students, and you'd have people come in who wanted to be recording engineers or mixers, and then they would get turned on by the business aspect of it, and then pursue that. Or people who were coming in for the business training, but then would get totally inspired by being in the recording studio or by being a songwriter. So I think of all of these amazing journeys that students there had, who might have come in one particular way, but then become curious about other things and gone in different directions.
Yeah, I know a couple people who work there now. Dan Charnish is there.
Of course, yeah.
Naima Cochran is there. Bob Power
Yep.
Is there, and an artist that I signed to Jive, Mickey Fax. He just came on board.
Yep.
He took Black Spot's start. Black Spot couldn't do it this season.
Yeah. So Dan Charnas, who's one of the great writers and researchers, I would say, and journalists in music, period. He, I want to say it was around 2005. So we launched that school in 2003. And I want to say around 2005, could have been 2004. I think he was walking by the building and he was like, "What is this Clive Davis department?" And I think he came upstairs and knocked on my door and introduced himself.
Wow.
And then we knew each other sort of tangentially, and bring him in for lectures and guest spots and all that kind of stuff. And when there was an opportunity for a full-time role in the area of what we call writing and history and emergent media studies, he was the ideal person for that. And he came in there full-time, and I was director of the writing area of the program, and we worked really closely together and developed so many amazing courses. And I just saw him recently, a couple of weeks ago, when I was in New York, and what a success story for that school. Just the music industry. He's such a gift to the entire music industry.
Yeah, we started around the same time. We both used to do rap promotions. He used to Profile Records.
Yep.
Dan's he's amazing, man. So let's get into the travel part, because I know Clive Davis School. Because Naima is actually either in or just came back from Berlin, because I guess it's a program in Berlin.
Yeah. So in 2010, I was artistic director of the Clive Davis Institute. At that time, it was an institute, and I became very interested in global studies and global travel for NYU, because New York University is very much a global university with portal campuses all over the world, and other kinds of campuses, degree granting campuses in Abu Dhabi and Shanghai. And so I took on the title of Director of Global Studies for the Clive Davis Institute to help build out our global offerings, and then became part of the global studies initiative, I'd say, at NYU. And so I taught at NYU Abu Dhabi in 2010, which was the launch of New York University's Abu Dhabi campus. And so I taught music classes there and classes on cultural studies, classes on celebrity and fame, for instance.
Hold on, don't gloss over it, my man. You was in Abu Dhabi. I need to know, like, that the cultural, I don't want to say shock, that may be a little too harsh, but being in a different world, literally, working in Abu Dhabi as compared to working in Manhattan.
Yeah, I mean, I was good. I mean, my parents they're immigrants. I was a Canadian who was living in the United States. I had, not traveled extensively, but I had traveled to Japan and other places and at that time. And so I was very curious and eager to travel. And I feel like New York University offered that opportunity at that time to faculty. And so for me, it was a no-brainer. Like I was eager to go. But Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates, to me, was a fascinating place with such an interesting, mix of cultures there. And so the idea of starting a music major there, it wasn't a Clive Davis Institute program. It was an NYU Abu Dhabi campus in which a student could pursue any degree or many degrees including a music major. So I was one of the first faculty there hired to help start that music major and help also build out the performing arts complex that they were creating there. It was fascinating. I was learning every day, meeting new people. The classes I was teaching were great. I was able to take students on trips to Istanbul to record. We're traveling every other week to Africa, to other parts of the Middle East, to Asia. So I've, over the course of my life, I've traveled to about 103 countries.
Oh, wow.
But I've recorded a lot and done a lot of work in different countries. And so I was in Abu Dhabi, for the most part, I was teaching classes on music, what is music, kind of, basic approaches to learning about music, but also classes on transnational record producing. So taking students to different countries. And
what is transnational? What is that? I've never heard of that before.
So essentially just means taking mobile recording equipment and going to another country and working with musicians who may or may not even speak English, and come from different cultural traditions and making music collaboratively, but through the medium of recording. Because the students at NYU Abu Dhabi came from countries all over the world. I mean, they're really high level, amazing students, but they're global. And so it became a really interesting opportunity for them to bring their own cultural traditions and interests in, global music making to their work in classes, but then also the opportunity to use Abu Dhabi as a kind of home base to make music in the country itself based on the culture and the music of the country, but then also be able to travel to India or to Africa to make music as well. So I am, and I really have always been interested in the global travels of music, where music goes in the world, and how travel and mobility have shaped the way that music is and how we even hear music. And so that's not just like luxury travel, that's also slave trades and spice trade, and how that's the nature of music.
It's so like cultural, how things move culturally through different parts of the world and kind of create become their own things,
Yeah, these are all music conversations, right? So thinking of somebody, that I love, like a song like Soul Makossa, right? Okay. By Manu Dibango, the Cameroonian jazz artist. That classic 70s track was Manu Dibango and his roots in Cameroonian traditional music and jazz, but also listening to James Brown in the late 1960s, mid 1960s, late 1960s, and funk. And he was putting all of these different musics together, and his travels informed the way that he heard music. And that song in particular, and his whole catalog, but that song in particular became, such an anthem, especially in the context of hip hop and breakdancing in the 1970s in New York and beyond. And he Michael Jackson then samples. He interpolates that, and then Rihanna interpolates it again on "Please Don't Stop the Music," just Stargate, who are from Norway. And so that I'm interested in all of those global travels and that global movement of music. And I think being in a place like Abu Dhabi gave me an opportunity to learn more about it myself, but then also to encourage students to think of themselves as global citizens moving throughout the world, and being able to use the world as your stage to make music, and not just where you come from, in terms of your city or your nation, et cetera, but to be much more of a global citizen. So that was exciting. I taught for some time in Singapore as well. NYU had a campus there. I launched a program in Berlin for the Clive Davis Institute of Recorded Music. And this was a program called Future Pop Music Studies, where students would go to Berlin for a semester to think about where music was headed in the next 30 or 40 years. Amazing faculty teaching courses on cryptocurrency and Bitcoin and AI and creative uses of data and robotics in music. That was unbelievable and amazing. And I was in Berlin for many years setting that up. And then when it was running, going back and forth to Berlin, doing that. We had a program, a class in Havana that students would take as well. So it was great. Amazing.
And we'll be right back.
Welcome to Merrick Studios, where stories take the mic and culture comes alive.
We're not just a network, we're a family, bringing you smart, soulful, unfiltered conversations.
And this season, we're bringing the heat with our biggest lineup yet. Whatever you're into, music, sports, business, we got you covered.
Merrick Studios, where the conversation starts and keeps going.
Check out our full lineup, including Unglossy with Bun B, Jeffrey Sledge, and myself, Tom Frank. Now streaming at wearemerrickstudios.com.
Master the art of lyricism with Pendulum Mink, the first school for rap. Learn elite techniques through immersive lessons, real-world exercises, and guidance from hip-hop icons. This is where MCs sharpen their skills and glow boldly on the mic. Ready to level up? Visit pendulummink.com and start your journey today.
And now, back to the show.
I don't know if you know Jive Records, where I worked for many years, was you sparked it in me because it was the guy who owned Jive, Clive called me. He's a South African,
Absolutely.
and they had a kind of a genre that they made up called Jive Records, where they would kind of take a popular song or play it with a South African twist and bend it, obviously would like spread out through Africa, throughout all the different countries in Africa. So when you're talking about that, I was thinking like, I remember him telling me about that, how, by the time it got to like Angola, let's just say, it kind of wouldn't sound the same as it did when it started because they put their thing on it.
Yeah.
But that's I need to travel more, but I know I've always been, when I do travel, I always like to go like where the people are and just like, I want to hear what's going on. I don't want to go over there and hear like Biggie Smalls, you know what I'm saying? I mean, no, obviously no disrespect because Biggie's a genius, but like I want to hear what they got popping off,
Yeah. You want to hear local music, and you want to know, how local music operates and all of that. But you always have to be open to being surprised by stuff. And so it's actually really interesting to think about, how Biggie's music has traveled throughout the world and what it's done in certain places and how people have responded to it, whether or not they know all of the lyrics or even understand all of the lyrics. Sometimes they're responding to things on a sonic level or a musical level. And then sometimes they're making music in response to that, or they've created a kind of, audience around his music that points to a different kind of connoisseurship of it. So I think all of those things are really fascinating, but it's important to be attentive for a whole number of reasons to what's going on around the world, and to not assume that your walk or your kind of terrain is the only important terrain. And I think right now we're in a moment of great cultural insensitivity and ethnocentrism, and travel is not the solution to that necessarily, because it's still a form of luxury that requires money and time and things that a lot of people don't have. But it can, if it's done well, and if it's done with an eye to true cultural engagement and developing competence in others' cultures rather than one's own, not just one's own, it can really be a solution for so many of the issues that plague us, I think, right now as a global entity.
And I agree. So I'm gonna skip around, but I'm gonna come back. So I saw that you're a big Sylvester fan.
Absolutely.
You don't meet Sylvester fans too much nowadays. He's been going so long, they kind of.
Sure.
So tell me about that, because you wrote some stuff on him, and I was always a big Sylvester. I just thought his voice was like crazy to me. It was like crazy, like really, like because you could hear all the gospel, you hear all the church like running, you hear it like it's dude song every Sunday morning. You could hear it, and then obviously when he got with Martha and Izora, like in their blend, like just tell me about it.
I think I got into his music somewhere in the I couldn't even tell you. Probably when I came to New York, I got into his music. And I'm a singer myself, and so I also have a really high falsetto voice. But I had always loved falsetto singers, whether it's Eddie Kendricks or others. And I started listening to Sylvester, and I got his greatest hits album, and it just completely blown away by it. But actually, it made me remember that the very first cassette tape that I ever owned, me and my brother had it in the house. It was K-Tel, the company. Disco Dancing.
Jeez.
And it had the Copacabana by Barry Manilow, and it had Love Is in the Air, Marty Stevens, and it had Sylvester. It had You Make Me Feel Mighty Real, which is his biggest song he had, this pop hit. And I didn't know who Sylvester was. I didn't know it was a man. I didn't know it was a woman. Didn't know anything about it, but I love that voice. I love that the track. And so getting back into Sylvester's music in the 90s, I was like, wow, there's a whole story here that's super fascinating and super interesting to me. Plus the fact that, here's a queer guy who wore dresses on stage, dress in drag,
full face of makeup,
feminine, and absolutely incredible from a musical standpoint, bringing together R&B and blues and gospel and jazz. And he clearly had a project around, the elevation of Black music at its highest levels. And you can hear that in the work. And his singing, even though he's using a falsetto, it's not a kind of artificial singing. It's really like a gospel, Pentecostal, singing that's really deep. And then he would surround himself by just superb musicians, all of his band members, but then also, of course, his famous background singers, the Two Tons of Fun, who became the Weather Girls, Martha Wash. So I got very into Sylvester in the 90s. I met Carl Hall, who was one of Sylvester's background singers, sings on the song Sell My Soul, and used to do background arrangements for Sylvester. Carl was a countertenor, so not even just a falsetto singer, but could sing through the rafters. If you've never heard his music, he was on Loma Records in the 60s. Absolutely.
I haven't heard it. I'll dig in.
Oh my gosh, I gotta send you some links. It's crazy. Carl Hall. So I met Carl and learned a lot more about Sylvester's world through Carl. And then Carl is the one who introduced me to Martha Wash, and became close with Martha Wash and her crew and community, and got to work with Martha Wash several times. And when I was at NYU at Clive Davis department, we did a bunch. I used to do these big sort of confabs, put these conferences and festivals and things like that together. And I still do that now in my job at USC. But there I did a conference on Public Enemy. It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. It was a 3-day conference just on the album itself.
Really 3 days digging into that album.
Just on the album, reuniting the Bomb Squad, getting some of the original journalists who wrote on it back then to talk about it. Chuck D was involved. Stetsasonic. I mean, it was incredible. But I also did a 2-day conference on Sylvester, which was the first of its kind. And there brought together scholars and musicians and journalists and friends of Sylvester to just panels all day long talking about who Sylvester was, what his importance was as a figure, which had never been done at the time. And it culminated with a concert that featured Martha Wash and Billy Porter and Kevin Abbey, the legendary kind of underground cult figure in music who's having his renaissance now through Beyonce's Renaissance album. So that was incredible. And then I did a podcast on Sylvester for Spotify, an original podcast on his life and work with Best Case production company. That was incredible. And continue to work on anything that helps elevate his life and his story, because I think in the context of popular music, music has always been a vehicle for underrepresented communities and disenfranchised communities and people to develop cultural capital and to come to the center of culture. So even when we were economically disenfranchised or politically disenfranchised, we held a lot of capital in the context of music and culture.
Absolutely.
And Sylvester's one of those figures who I think, having a number one pop hit, and he had 24 top 40 R&B hits, is somebody who found a certain kind of mainstream success for a certain amount of time, not without challenges, because he faced so many personal and professional challenges, but he found this success in a way that I think pointed to the option and the opportunity for liberation, for freedom for others, right? Regardless of your identity, your background, et cetera, that you, no matter how marginalized your community might be, you may have an opportunity to find a sense of freedom and liberation through music. And that's the power of music. That's why I'm so interested in music, for its ability to not only make us feel something deeply emotionally, which is important in a world of indifference and apathy, but also its ability to literally move culture and move communities and center people who have not often been at the center of establishment narratives.
And bring, sounds cliche, but it actually does bring people together that might not have linked up in any other kind of way. Like you go to some, festival out in the park in the summertime, and it's just it's a cross section of people, and everybody's having a good time with people that you might not have ever met. You know what I mean? So, but that jam comes on, or those jams come on, and everybody's dancing and having a good time. It doesn't matter.
I think that's, music as an aggregating force. It literally brings people together, in the context of a world that continually threatens to separate us, divide us, segregate us, atomize us, polarize us. Music can become an aggregating force that brings people together and allows them to see and feel the things that connect them. And it does that in the most magical of ways, because it's sometimes just through sound itself that in the way that happens. But the writer James Baldwin would always say, he would describe theater as flesh and blood corroborating flesh and blood. He was talking about the relationship between the performer and the audience, that there was something that happened where the performer formatted the audience and the audience formatted the performer. And there was this like feedback loop of engagement that would happen where you're in a theater or you're in a concert or you're in a nightclub and you feel like the room is spinning and you're just like you're one with everyone else. And the hairs stand up on your neck or on your arm and you're moved. Music is literally moving you into an experience, an engagement, a communion with other people. That's what's so powerful about it. It's what's mystical and almost magical about it. And yet it is the core chief central power of the medium that we're involved in and why we all chase it so much, because it's not like anything else.
You're right. I know he just recently passed away, and we're RIP to him. So I know you wrote the liner notes for Voodoo.
Yep.
So tell me about working with D'Angelo and how that came about and what that experience was like.
Sure. So I wrote the liner notes for the reissue of Voodoo in 2012, because Saul Williams wrote the original liner notes for the album that came out.
I didn't know that. I didn't know Saul Williams wrote the originals.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know that.
That's Saul. That's all Saul. And so I got a call from Light in the Attic record that were putting out the vinyl, the reissue of Voodoo on vinyl in 2012 with Sony. And they wanted me to write the liner notes. I was living in Abu Dhabi at the time, or I was like, fall in Abu Dhabi, spring in New York, or spring in New York and fall in Abu Dhabi. What a way to live.
Exactly.
Like you never know where you are at any moment.
You ain't complaining. You know what
I mean? It was great. It was also strange. But so I got a call to do it, and I asked Matt Sullivan, who was head of Light in the Attic. I said, what am I able to do here? Like, what kind of notes do you want? Do you want 500 words, 1,000 words? And he said, as much as you want, do whatever you want. So don't ever tell me that, because I'm a long form person. So I will write something like lengthy, but I wanted to write on the significance of the album. I felt I had never read an article that really explained why that album was so meaningful and so significant. It's one of my favorite albums of all time. And I hadn't read that. And I also felt like I hadn't seen something that had comprehensively interviewed all the people who were involved with it. So in Abu Dhabi, like 3:00 in the morning, I'm reaching out to I reached out to every person I possibly could who had worked on the record. So Russell Amato, who had mixed it, Pino Palladino played guitar, Charlie Hunter, Spanky, Alfred, like everyone that I could possibly get my hands on to talk to. James Poyser. The only person I didn't talk to who played a key role in that album was D'Angelo himself. Because it didn't strike me he was going to be very interested in talking about it. I had not ever met him also at that point. But what ended up happening is I interviewed everyone and I wrote 8,000 words, I think, on it. It probably came down a bit in the edit. But I tried to tell the full story of Voodoo from my perspective. And to me, the power of that album had to do with two things. One, timing. So I called the liner notes, "The Time is Out of Joint," after the Shakespeare line from Hamlet, because it strikes me that the power of Voodoo has to do with its off-kilter, strange grooves, and the time, like it feels strangely out of joint, from a traditional kind of rhythmic perspective. And I wanted to figure out why that is and what that had to do with the significance of the record. And so a lot of that had to do with Questlove playing sort of behind the beat. He was instructed to do so. because they were trying to capture Jay Dilla's style of production.
Mm.
And no one had written on Jay Dilla at that time. There was no like lengthy writing on Jay Dilla and rhythm. So I think I was one of the first probably to write on Jay Dilla and rhythm. And that happened because Pino Palladino was saying, hey, this is what we're doing. This is how we made the record. And that's also what Questlove had told me as well. And also the other thing that I think was super unusual about that record, besides the sort of timing and the kind of off-kilter aspect of the rhythm, is that D'Angelo himself, you know, is he moved against everything that was happening in culture at the time, which was all about speed, immediacy, social media. You know, the whole mediascape had changed in the age of the internet in the 1990s, and that album was made in the 1990s, but it takes its own time. It's unhurried in a way that also D'Angelo, as an artist himself, is unhurried. And, you know, he would put out albums when he wanted to. And he really only put out 3 studio albums in his entire, you know, career. But each one of them is iconic, amazing, sounds like nothing else. And he, you know, to me is just a fascinating figure. I got to meet him because Questlove brought him to a class at the Clive Davis Institute of Recorded Music. Questlove was teaching, and he brought him to a class. And so got to meet him and connect with him there and a couple other times over the years. But I know that he was a fan of my writing. I was a huge fan of his music and just his commitment to being a true musician. Didn't have a fashion line, didn't have a this, that, just music.
He didn't have sneakers, you know what I'm saying? He was just doing his thing, you know?
Doing his thing.
Yeah. I met him on the first album. Before the first album, Q-Tip brought him to my office at Jive, and he was Q-Tip and Ali and a couple other guys. We were just hanging out. You know, he's like, it's our boy Mike. He's from Virginia. He's super dope. They call him they call him Mike.
Yep.
And we sat there and, you know, we just shot the shit. You know, he was cool. He had his wire frame glasses on. He had a high top fade at that time. And he was real cool, kind of quiet. You know, we just kind of talked shit. And then when they started recording the first album, they did it at Battery, which is also in that building. Sure. So I would see him all the time, and he'd pop up sometime and say, what's up? I'd cut through. Bob Powell was the engineer, you know, so and just kind of the little bits of pieces I got to watch him work was like, Jesus Christ, man, this guy is fucking ridiculous. You know?
Incredible. And it could have gone so many different ways, you know, but I think what's great about him is that he chose to work with musicians who were as good or better than him.
Yes.
Throughout his career. And he made R&B music for the most part, but he saw himself in some ways as a jazz guy. So he worked in these kind of ensemble collective settings, especially I think when he put the Vanguard together for his 2015 album and beyond. You know, the music stands for itself. It sounds like nothing else of its time. It went on to influence almost everything in R&B and electronic music and pop. And those kind of weird off-kilter, sort of inebriated, you know, grooves.
Drunk drum patterns and shit. They
still resonate, and they will for a very long time.
Absolutely. So the trailer dropped today for the Michael movie. And I thought of you because I know you've written about Michael a couple of times. So tell me, well, first of all, did you see the trailer and what did you think? I haven't seen
the trailer yet, although I'm very curious to see it.
I'm gonna spoil. I liked it. I would say that, and I'll let you see. But I was like, okay, we on to something here. We might be cooking with some gas. You know, I was nervous, but it looks really good. But tell me about your writings with Michael.
I've always been a huge Michael Jackson fan. The first vinyl album I ever received from my mother was Michael Jackson's Greatest Motown Hits. So he was the ultimate quintessential figure of aspiration for me in the 1980s. I think him and Prince, but especially I was Michael Jackson. And, we aspired to be like Michael Jackson. I mean, I had the one glove and the red jacket and all of that stuff. I mean, it wasn't just like, I liked Michael Jackson. I was like, I want to be Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
He was a figure of great, immense achievement and accomplishment and incredible aspiration. So, I followed him all my life, as a fan, and wrote about him pretty extensively, in scholarly platforms, and then also just as popular writing. And he passed away in 2009. I wrote a book on him called the Michael Jackson Treasures. I wrote a blog post that went viral on my appreciation for him overlooking his career. I've appeared in 2 Spike Lee documentaries about Michael Jackson.
So you're in a bad one.
I'm in Bad 25, and then also in Michael Jackson's journey from Off the Wall to Motown to Off the Wall. That Spike Lee directed. And I've been in numerous documentaries about Michael Jackson and conferences and everything else. But he is ceaselessly amazing, right? The music, the production, it's just so unparalleled. It's also a complicated figure and not an easy figure to sort of parse out. Some choose not to listen to his music because of controversies that I don't need to refer here. And all of that stuff, I think, is valid and fair, to debate and discuss. But I think the music still stands, no matter how you feel about Michael Jackson as a person, what he may or may not have done. In terms of the music, I mean, it has a magical power unto itself that will never cease.
It's 2 things about him that amaze me. Number one, the fact that kids today, like, still dress like him, or the Thriller thing is every Halloween. It's like those records are 40 years old.
Oh yeah.
And kids, so you see a kid doing a Michael Jackson, he might be like 9. He was the records have so much staying power. It's like how did Billie Jean, they get with the dance moves, and even when people were compare him to Chris Brown, who's also on Jive, and I totally respect him. I think Chris is amazing as an entertainer. I'm like, but Michael invented it. That's the difference. Michael invented those dance moves. He invented that look, whereas Chris and others might be able to take it to the next level. But think about the person who sat there and invented it. Like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, and it's still lasting to today. Oh, yeah. It's incredible.
Well, the jazz artist Anthony Braxton, he would say, to have a healthy musical culture, you need to have 3 things. You need to have people who are what you would call restructuralists, who are innovators, who create the innovations. You need to have people who are stylists, who take those innovations and broaden them to a wider public. And you need to have people who are essentially traditionalists or archivists, who can archive the whole culture and see the full range of innovation and stylization and put it in context. And, the people who are restructuralists or innovators, there are people who are also kind of master restructuralists. And those are people who create entire new platforms and paradigms for how we see and feel music and culture. And he would reference somebody like a Charlie Parker, who created this language around bebop, or one of the people who created that, who, we're still basically in that paradigm, right? In the context of jazz, and we've, extended it in some ways, but it's still working within the framework. And I would argue that Michael Jackson is a master restructuralist in that way, that what he did in terms of his innovation, he created his own musical vocabulary and movement vocabulary, the way he moves, the way he looks, the iconicity. And it was so powerful. It's like a crater went off, like an asteroid, like just landed and just like left us this crater. And in that crater, in that space, that's where everybody's still playing. The innovations that he created have stood the test of time, and it feels like everyone's just still working within his paradigm that he created.
Yeah. So but I don't want to skip over the USC Thornton School of Music, where you're at now. I want to talk a little bit about that. Well, who is Thornton? Was that a person?
Yeah, that's Flora L. Thornton. She's one of the great philanthropists in Los Angeles, who donated so much money to many, many cultural organizations and institutions. And in 1999, she gave to the School of Music, as it was named then in USC, and it became the Flora L. Thornton School of Music.
Okay, I didn't know that. I saw the name. I figured it was somebody important, but I knew you would know. You know what I mean? So tell me about developing this school. You're doing this twice now, which is insane. that you're doing it again at this high level, and what's happening and what's next, you know?
I appreciate it. So I started here 2.5 years ago. I left New York. I left, which is the city I lived in for such a long time. I left the Clive Davis Institute of Recorded Music, a school that I love and is incredible and doing great work. And I decided to move to Los Angeles and start a new position as the dean of the USC Thornton School of Music. It's a dream of mine to be here. I've always wanted to live in LA. I've always wanted to work in LA, and I've always held great admiration for USC, specifically as a university, and for the Thornton School of Music. Students used to collaborate between Clive Davis Institute and Thornton.
Okay.
When during the pandemic, for instance, I've known some of the faculty here, and its reputation is world class. It's considered one of the top music schools in the world, often ranked among peers like Juilliard and Curtis Institute,
Wow.
and so many others. And so I knew this history. The school is 142 years old. It's one of the oldest cultural institutions in all of Los Angeles. It was the first professional school at USC. Half of the first graduating class of USC in 1884 were music students. It went on to help populate so much of the professional music community in Los Angeles, from the LA Philharmonic to, the sound stages where films are recorded. So many of those people are music students, music industry, et cetera. And it has this incredible broad range of programs across its 3 divisions: classical, contemporary, research, and scholarly studies. And everything is just at such a high level here. And so it's been a joy to be in LA and to be at the Thornton School and to work with the students and to try to bring some of what I do to the school. It's a very different situation being at a kind of startup school that you literally start from scratch versus being at one in which you inherit all of this incredible tradition across all these different areas. But I think the opportunity is to really help pivot the school and think toward its kind of 40-year vision of where it needs to be and where also music education should be. I'm always interested in taking music education to the next level, right? Like, what can we do? First of all, music education is so important because without it, right, it's very difficult to imagine forward momentum in the culture at all, whether that education happens at a university or on the street or wherever it may be. But you need education.
But you're even more important to me, not to cut you off, because they've taken so much music out of high schools.
Absolutely.
And now, like you're really important to keep it moving forward, because a lot of kids don't get the opportunity in high schools like they used to.
Absolutely. And then it's our job to make sure that students have as much access as possible.
Yes.
Given that, and given potential losses to funding on federal level and other kinds of potential existential threats to arts education and music education. So I love having been involved in music education for so long. I think it's an incredible space to be in as it relates to the music industry, because it's not the music industry, but it bears a relationship to the music industry. And we've really helped staff the music industry from an executive standpoint for the last 25 years that I've been involved in all of this, and introduced so many culture defining artists into the marketplace. And so I think, a music school like this has a real instrumental value in helping shape the future of music. And so I take that as a real responsibility in my position. And I'm always trying to make sure that students have real world opportunities, but also an opportunity to figure out how to create a sustained, long lasting career for themselves in the midst of so much disruption and so much precarity for musicians in general. How do you do that? And the university is a great place where you can come and, make mistakes and learn how to be better and to improve what you do in a supportive environment. And it's one of the reasons I love what I'm able to do.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, man. Like I said, to do that twice is very, very impressive. At 2 big, powerful schools, and to create 2 music programs. Well, inherit one and enhance it, and start the other one, and which is still going gangbusters. And what you're doing to give it back to the community in general, and the music community. is amazing. I'm really impressed by what you're doing, man. I am. I'm I'm serious. I really am. You know, I got to get out to LA and sit in on the class and watch you work. You know,
Let's do it. Come teach one.
Yeah. I'd love to. I'd love to sit, you know, talk to the kids, listen to the kids. Yeah, that'd be incredible, man. You know, I really appreciate this time, bro. Sidebar, did you work on Piece by Piece?
I did. Yeah,
I saw that. I finally saw that movie yesterday. I did not see it in the theater. It's on Netflix now, and I was like, let me watch it. It was great.
It's great. It's amazing. So yeah, that's the Pharrell kind of biopic. I don't think you use that word even to describe it. It's such a fantastic film, but it's Morgan Neville, great director, decided to do a film on Pharrell and his life, and I was a consulting producer on that, and it was a no-brainer for me to want to be involved in that, partly because of Morgan, who's I think incredible. And then also, you know, I had the opportunity to bring in Pharrell to NYU as our artist in residence in 2015. And that was amazing. And I think he's incredible. And just the opportunity to be able to contribute to the telling of his story in that medium was great. I'm also making my directorial debut.
Okay, tell me about it.
But I'm not going to tell you any more about it yet.
Okay.
You'll hear about it soon enough.
I'm watching
soon. Yeah.
Whatever it is, I'm watching it definitely. Yeah, I really appreciate this, bro. This was dope, and I feel like we could have talked for 2 hours on. Company Freak.
Oh yeah.
Tell me about Company Freak. I didn't want to skip over that.
Sure. So you know, growing up, I loved so much music, but I really love the sort of sophisticated R&B and funk and soul of the late 70s. Nile Rodgers, huge. I'm a huge Nile Rodgers and Chic fan.
Amazing.
Patrick Adams, the disco producer, did all of that amazing P&P stuff and music.
Leroy Burgess, you know what I'm saying?
Just all of that stuff. So, you know, strings and funk and all that to me is like my wheelhouse. And so I had this idea around 2013 to put together a band that would be this loose affiliation, sort of studio band, loose affiliation of incredible talent. So get all the amazing young singers and also instrumentalists and singers from those classic groups like Chic and D-Train. So Norma Jean Wright and the late Alpha Anderson and Lucy Martin and Hubert Eves on piano. And then I would have younger folks as well involved that I think were at a great level and sort of curate the entire thing. And I wrote all the songs and did all the production myself and put it out through Opus label based out of LA. And then the second one, second album I put out myself. And we performed a lot, and that was just a great outlet for me to do a lot of music. And I am looking forward at some point to getting the band back together with some new music, because we got to perform most recently at Lincoln Center a couple years ago, and we performed at Central Park Summer Stage, and we had an amazing kind of run. And it was a great outlet for me creatively. It really wasn't about making a ton of money. It was just about finding a way to honor the music that I loved from that time period and just doing it with style and sophistication and flair.
That's dope, man. That sounds like fun.
It was great. Yeah. My life as a band leader, which, I'm happy to step back into at any point. And I still, produce concerts and do musical supervision and direction for concerts and so on. But running a band is a full-time gig. And
that's a lot. That's a lot of work. You got band personalities to juggle. Yeesh. Good luck. God bless you for that,
Yeah.
But I appreciate it, man. Appreciate this, Jason. This is super dope. Hope you enjoyed yourself.
I did. Good connecting with you. We got to connect in offline at some point.
Absolutely. Cool.
Yeah.
Hey, so what I do real quick, I do a little segment where I ask quick rapid fire questions.
Let's do it.
It's about 5 minutes. So tell me your 3 favorite pianists.
Oh my gosh. Oscar Peterson.
Okay.
Evgeny Kissin, classical musician. Favorite. Somebody I'm currently listening to or get to work with at USC, Gerald Clayton.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are your answers. You know? Give me the 3 favorite pieces that you wrote, you have written as a journalist.
I think D'Angelo liner notes. Time is out of joint. The blog piece that I wrote on Michael Jackson right after he passed, because it was so personal, and it just felt like it was just kind of an ecstatic writing, just sort of putting things out there. Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. A third piece, I've written so many things. I got to write this piece for Red Bull Music Academy when it was around, when they had their site on Patrick Adams. I got to write a lengthy piece and interviewed Nile Rodgers, and I got to meet Patrick, and of course I interviewed him for it, and I just went really in depth into his story. And so that one just stands out to me because there is something that I love about the ability to write and to reclaim and to put some of these figures who deserve more attention into the center and give them their shine. And so that felt like that was what it was for me. And he told me after he read it, he said, well, I feel like I can leave this earth now because I feel like my story's been told. And, he did pass away, some years later. And I always remember that comment.
Yeah, he got his flowers. Yeah. The last one, and this is going to be a hard one. You can pass on this if you can't come up with the 3. Yeah, this is a tough one.
Yeah, gosh.
Give me your 3 favorite Michael Jackson songs.
Oh, okay. That may not be that tough.
Okay. This will go all the way back to the Jackson 5. It's whatever you want to do.
Working Day and Night.
Okay.
Another Part of Me.
Okay.
And let me see. The third one now is hard. I'm like, I don't know. Probably go with something earlier, maybe One Day in Your Life.
Oh, that's a good one.
He didn't write it, but I think his interpretation of it is stunning.
Yeah, that's One Day in Your Life was a good one. I wasn't expecting that song to be a pick, but that's a good pick.
Yeah,
it's a good pick. All right, man. Well, thank you, bro. I appreciate
Jeff, thank you. I appreciate you.
You can catch Mixed and Mastered on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, or wherever you get your podcasts. Hit that follow button, leave a review, and tell a friend. I'm your host, Jeffrey Sledge. Mixed and Mastered is produced and distributed by Merrick Studios.